One of my favorite indie games that came out last year is a little game called Celeste. It's by the people of Map Makes Games, who are the same people who made Towerfall, and you can kind of tell with the art style and the movement of the game, as it's very simple and there's really not much to it. You got jumping and dashing, and that's pretty much about it. There's also grabbing onto the wall, but that's not really too much. But yeah, this game is really good. It actually got nominated last year for Game of the Year, and it's one that I actually voted for. And honestly, I thought it should have won because it really is a magnificent game. And it's amazing that such a small indie company can make such a big game, and it's gotten so many great reviews over the time. And it's surprising to me that it didn't get Game of the Year. And the game's very simple. You start off as this girl named Madeline, and she wants to climb the mountain Celeste, which is a very magical and strange mountain that has weird powers, and it's a very difficult mountain to climb. And over the chapters slash areas that she discovers and people that she discovers new mechanics and new ways to kind of get around to climb this mountain. And may I just say, the level design and difficulty curve of this game is really well done. Honestly, one of the best examples of difficulty curve slash level design I've seen in a while. As each game or each chapter starts off with you learning the basics and having a little bit of more of a difficult climb, and then adding a new concept to it. So for example, chapter 1 has these platforms that when you stand on, they either go straight up or straight left or straight right or straight down. And later on, you discover that you can use that to your momentum and to your advantage. And then after that, you actually learn that sometimes the momentum doesn't help you, and it can pull you to your death. And so it does such a great job of trial and error and learning from your mistakes, which is the biggest thing of this game, is learning from your mistakes, as you will die a lot in this game. I think my total deaths was probably like a little bit under 20,000, which is a lot, and you will die a lot. This is a very hard game to master, but it's not too bad to complete the game. But the after content is what gets you. And the reason I'm reviewing this now is because I recently beat the game fully, because recently the game came out with a first and final DLC, which is chapter 8, called Farewell. And this chapter is like no other. It's very, very hard, and it even introduces a new mechanic which I did not even see coming. Basically, they add the mechanic of wave dashing. Yes, that's what it's called. There's even a PowerPoint presentation that you find throughout the chapter that teaches you how to wave dash, which is honestly really cool and funny. And basically, it teaches you how to wave dash, and it was at first a speedrunner's tactic, but later on, here in Farewell Chapter 9, it's used as a gameplay mechanic, where the level then becomes you have to wave dash to complete the climb, to proceed to the next area, and to move on. And Chapter 9 does add some other new features as well, like these pufferfish that bounce you back and forth and stuff like that. And you can also jump on them for a little bit of height. as well as these jellyfish, which act as like a paraglider that you can glide with, and so on. But like I said, every chapter introduces a new mechanic, and it starts off pretty simple, kind of introducing the mechanic, teaching you how it's used, and basically letting the player learn how it's used without kind of telling it. As there's really no indication most of the time of the new mechanic. You kind of find out yourself, similar to Super Metroid, where you get the morph ball and you figure out how to go underneath the platform. Similar stuff like that, which I honestly just love, and having yourself teach you how to play the game is such a better concept than a tutorial guide telling you what to do. And that's not just really all there is to it. The game really is beautiful in level design and difficulty curve and all that stuff, but it also has such a good story. As Madeline suffers from depression, and the mountain Celeste is kind of a metaphor of depression, and it's her struggle of trying to overcome this depression that she has and to fight over it. But then later on, she figures out that she can't fight with it, and that she has to figure out how to deal with it and how to kind of join forces with it, as her depression is also shown throughout the game as her other self, which is also Madeline, her other self that is introduced in chapter 2. And yeah, she has even a downfall segment, I think in chapter 6, where she tries and fights her depression, but she ends up falling really far down to the bottom of the mountain, where she kind of has to start over. But then she figures out, I have to work with my depression, and then she kind of gets a new life as she gets the ability to dash twice, which I kind of haven't explained yet. So the dashing mechanic in this game is kind of the big power of this game, or the big, like, I guess, mechanic of itself, as you can only dash once, and you have to use that dash very wisely, because most of the time that one dash is the difference between you getting to the next area or you dying. So it's very, not really risk reward type of thing, but knowing when to dash and knowing when to kind of not dash, and when to kind of glide around or to use the mechanics some other way. And the way to regain your dash is by landing on a platform, or by getting these little crystals in the air, or some other ways, like some of the mechanics will give you your dash back. And then later on in chapter 7, you actually get 2 dashes, but it's taken away from you in chapter 9 for some reason, because her other self doesn't want to work with her anymore. It doesn't really make any sense a little bit, but it makes the level a whole lot harder. And difficulty isn't really a problem in this game too much, as you might be saying, oh, this game's too hard for me, I don't want to get it. But it does such a good job of teaching you, as well as the difficulty curve, like I said before, that it kind of eases you into the more difficult areas. And some of the more difficult areas are even locked by these hearts that you have to collect, which are hidden all over the world, as well as these strawberries, which the strawberries are kind of optional and don't really mean much, but the hearts are actually required to get to chapter 8, as well as get to the second half of chapter 9. And these hearts can be collected in the normal story levels, hidden away, while there's also these B-side levels, which are also hidden away in the I guess A-side levels, which are the story levels. And these B-side levels are pretty much harder alternates that kind of expand on the mechanics that are introduced in that chapter, as well as just making things a lot harder. And once you beat those, you can also get a heart as well. And there's also C-sides as well, which I actually kind of forget how I unlocked those. I think I don't know if they were in B-side, or if you just had to complete B-side to get it. But yeah, they're a lot harder than both the story and the B-side missions, where the C-side missions are just brutally insane. And yeah, honestly, they're the hardest parts of this game, other than Chapter 9 itself. As Chapter 9 itself, I have 2,500 deaths just in that chapter. But Celeste did such a good job with that last slash first DLC that it doesn't even make me mad, because it had such a good way to end the game, as well as ending the mechanics. And I didn't even talk about the music yet. The music in this game is just as good as the gameplay slash difficulty curve slash level design slash everything in this game. The music complements so well with what's going on, and it gets more intense as you progress through the level. So sometimes most of the time it'll be calm in the beginning, and it'll like kind of ease you into the controls, and then once things get a little bit harder, the music kind of goes up in tempo and kind of gets more instruments played, and like has like a bass line to it, stuff like that, and it makes the song into something completely different as you're going through this level now, and you've already mastered the basics, and now you're doing all these insane tricks that you didn't even know were possible, which is also just such a great thing that this game does, is that the things that you thought were impossible are possible by just figuring things out as you go. And like, I've even seen a YouTube video of this game literally makes you better at every other game, because, and not even just games, but even sports in general, or any game in general, because this game helps you learn from your mistakes, as well as figuring out what you've been doing and how to improve on that, and how to make things better for yourself, as well as just overcoming the climb and figuring out the hard parts. And then once getting over the hard parts, you basically ease into the easy parts of the climb and go through the level like it's nothing. And it's so satisfying to see once you go back after like beating the harder levels, you go back to the easy levels, and that you thought were hard before, and now you just have mastered how to play them, and you kind of already know the kind of movement, as it's kind of stuck in your brain now, of how the level is laid out, and you can just zoom through it right then and there. But as I was talking about the difficulty before, I already got sidetracked. But if the difficulty is too hard, there's actually an assist mode, which I don't really recommend, but I had to use it a few times here and there. I didn't use the invincibility assist, but I did use the 2 dash assist, which you can pretty much help you get over sections. I usually did it if I was having trouble with like one section, but if you're having trouble with a section or a level, you can turn on you can change the dashes, you can change the game speed, and you can change if you want invincibility or not. And later on, once you beat all the C sides, all the B sides, and all the A sides, you actually get these things called variants, which gives a lot of replay value to this game. As you can turn on mirror mode, you can turn on what else is there? 360 dashing, as you could only dash in 8 directions in the normal game. But with 360 dashing, you can dash anywhere, which I thought should have been in the actual game, but makes things interesting. There's also this thing that you can turn on called super dashing, where it just makes your dashes a lot more, covers a lot more space. And then there's also alter ego, which I think just changes your costume to be battle lines, which also Madeline and Battleline, if you didn't know, are in Towerfall. But other than that, there's also, I think, hiccups, which makes you like bounce every like few seconds, so it can mess you up from a climb, as well as no grabbing, so you're not able to grab the wall in any of the levels if you turn that on, which I don't even know if that's even possible to do some of the levels without grabbing, but I guess you would just have to constantly jump onto the wall instead of grabbing on. And I think there's also one which like is low stamina or like low friction, which really just adds a lot of replay value, as you can go back to the earlier levels and kind of just um, mess around with all the variants that you have at your disposal. And yeah, I haven't really tried any myself, but I have been playing it recently just to kind of go back and see how much I have improved from the first time I played to now, um, going back to chapter 9 and seeing how difficult that was, and after overcoming that, all the other levels just seem way so easier because that level is just really, really hard. But other than that, there really isn't much else to this game. It really should have won Game of the Year in my opinion, because it did so many things right that not a lot of other games did, and it really deserves everyone's attention, honestly. And especially for an indie game, this is just such a phenomenal milestone for both indie games as well as platformers or any game in general, because honestly not many games have accomplished such a perfect difficulty curve as well as level design and all that stuff. But yeah, with all that, I'd probably give Celeste a 9.5 out of 10. It really is just, it has everything right and not too many things wrong with it. So yeah, that's my thoughts about Celeste. So thank you guys all for watching. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and stay tuned for more reviews right here on Untitled. Bye.